Good evening, everybody. It's a black book, so y'all gotta say good evening back. You know? There we go. I'm Mark Hill, owner of Uncle Bobbie's Coffee and Books, and we are very, very excited to have tonight's book talk. I Can't Date Jesus: Love, Sex, Family, Race, and Other Reasons I've Put My Faith in Beyonce.
She knew it.
It's an amazing book. It's the New York Times. We don't get a lot of New York Times best-selling authors in here. And when we do, they're people who took like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks to make the list. He made the list like the first week. The book was so popular. The book resonates with a lot of people. I had read it before, and I reread it today, and I was laughing again, which is always a good sign.
It's fascinating because I didn't know he knew I was alive until about a few weeks ago. Nice.
Life works out that way. So, very much alive. Really appreciate his writing, and very excited to have him here. I was scared we weren't gonna be able to get you because I know you've been traveling so much. We've been hearing you on the radio. You've been,
I'm around.
I see. So a lot of first books are. I have a lot of questions for you, but first books are always interesting,
right?
Because it's the first chance to present yourself to the world as an author. You know, obviously, columns, article, all that stuff is cool, but this is like your chance to present yourself to the world as an author. And you chose an interesting way to do it, right? In terms of kind of memoir, autobiography, but also essay, as an essayist,
right?
And a comedian. You're like a black Dave Sedaris or something.
I appreciate you saying that. When I announced it, I was like, think of Sedaris, but if his dad had gold teeth. The problem was getting publishers to actually connect with that possibility was the challenge.
Right.
Continues to be the challenge, but yeah. I've actually had a very specific vision of how my life should be. Probably around 25, I was kind of bold enough to think I could write a book then. Back then, essay collections were kind of doing okay, and then they stopped. Yes. There was an author named Helena Andrews. She wrote Bitches the New Black. I'm obsessed with Helena. I was a big fan of her columns. She's actually the person who gave me her book proposal to kind of as a guide to figure out how to come up with my own. And basically, for several years, everyone was like, you're cute, but I don't want to smash. Or they use very nice ways of saying you're niche, including the few black people in publishing. So it was really for me. When I finally got a book deal and it was very anticlimactic, I cried. It was not tears of joy. I thought I was getting a little bit more money up front, but it's it's fine. It's working itself out. Right. That private loan debt is real though.
You can get it back faster though.
Yes, I'm learning. If y'all folks please keep buying.
Right.
No, I knew what I wanted to do. I really wanted to put myself, because as much as I'm me and everything that I write, but honestly, as I'm finally kind of getting out of that life, I don't give a damn about half the stuff that I have to write about. Having to consistently, you at least do it on TV, so that's just fun. Doing an essay for like not a lot of money, time, like that's so draining. And so for me, I knew I always wanted to have something to say. I wanted to make people laugh. I wanted to make people think. I also was very specific about wanting to present, for me at least, a different idea of what a gay black man can write, particularly through like a major publisher. I didn't want to lean into pathology. I didn't want to, I didn't want to do that, because I mentioned this quite a few times because it's true, and I keep repeating this. You have to. If I wanted to write a sadder book, I would have got a lot more money up front. It would have sold sooner.
Very true.
But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do this my way, and starting to pay off. But yeah, because it's interesting how like even you being like straight and black, there was something that you wouldn't be able to get into it. And they definitely thought white people would be like, I don't know. They thought so little of the audiences, like black and white. Now I want to say it. There's a black woman in particular, one of the majors, was a little condescending. She was like, oh, don't you know a lot? And then she said in so many words, she thought white people didn't care about black people and black people were too homophobic.
Right.
And I don't believe either to be true, at least to not those extents.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a journey.
And you don't love the Lord.
Yeah. Yes.
You don't love the Lord. You read the book, we worry about the alienating people. I'm being playful about the love the Lord part, but
I think because I was respectful. I'm critical of religion, but I'm respectful of the role it plays in people's lives. And for me, that wasn't like fake, because in trying to understand my mother and still relate to my mother, respect my mother, because I respect how much faith is played in her role, that I try to apply it to everybody else, but I definitely have my issues. And actually, if I had sold the book earlier, it probably would have been an angrier book. I probably would have been a lot more harsher towards religion because I wasn't really forgiving of everyone involved, or like Catholicism, how that impacted me, or like the black church having to write about it, or the experience like friends. So it came out was supposed to, but yeah, that part was a challenge because I was curious to know what black people think. But actually, what I've come to realize, whenever I've written something critically about religion, the saints usually go up for me. I'm very much a heathen, but
right,
because I'm getting so many emails from not just like but like white evangelicals.
Really?
Very fascinating. Because one of my friends tagged me. He sent the video to me. Some very nice white woman was practically like had a book blog on YouTube, was pleading for people to read it. She's like, I'm not black, I'm not gay, and I wasn't Catholic, but I really understand because religion did this to me. And she's like, I'm not queer, but I really want people. I was like, when I have white people on YouTube pushing for me, I might be okay.
That's a you up. You are in a moment. Next week, well, last Tuesday, Kiese Lehman's book Heavy came out. He'll be here next week. Darnell Moore wrote a book this past spring, No Ashes in the Fire. The year before, Michael Denzel Smith, Invisible Man, got the whole world watching. There's a whole string of memoirs of black men writing memoirs, and black women absolutely are writing memoirs too. A whole string of them
Shout
as
out
well.
to Samantha Irby.
Oh my God! And then you got Brittany Cooper's Eloquent Rage. There's a certain kind of moment that's happening right now. People are reflecting on their lives, but it seems to be happening. The people writing them. What's fascinating to me is the people writing them are much younger.
Right.
Like used to, when I heard memoir or reflection or autobiography, I think 60, I think 70, I think a full life. You about to go back home to the Lord. You're like, let me get these words out before.
Yeah, that's funny.
Now y'all be in your 20s and 30s and 40s writing these books. Why now?
I think because maybe in like the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a period when like people like Angela Nessel was writing the Broke Diaries. That was really that really much inspired me. There's an old book, Bulletproof Diva, that was like essays, but it was memoir-ish from all her columns. Like I love that. Even David Sedaris, I mean technically he was older, but it was early 30s when he started. Yeah, so it wasn't completely unheard of, but I will say it was a very long period where that just was not happening. Because some people have said, why are you writing a book? You barely alive.
Right.
I didn't write an autobiography. I wrote a very period of my life. It was very intentional, like coming of age story. Yeah. I wrote about my life to a certain point, and I think sometimes when people tell their life stories, that so much has to happen before you come to some resolution. I wanted to kind of allow a lot of greatness, like particularly with my parents, because I think a lot of people don't. At least not for me. I didn't have a book to say, what do you do with a parent who hasn't completely rejected you but doesn't embrace you? Right. Like, and what do you do in the meanwhile? Yeah. I wouldn't want to wait until 45 to write about that because a lot can happen between now and then. So I didn't want to make it seem like I was trying to speak for everybody. I was very intentional about this is my life. This is exactly what I'm. Because I'm not in the no disrespect, but Jesse Alba, like people anoint you in the media as like the Pope and Prime Minister of Black folk. Yeah. I didn't want to be like that representative of all people. I want to be very intentional. So I wasn't worried about it. I'm actually really happy that so many people in like their late 20s and 30s. I think you can be capable of it as long as you are self-aware. I will say most people are not as self-aware as they think, but all the books you mentioned, we all kind of have an idea of who we have an idea of who we are, and we know what we want to say, and that's why I think all these books have done so well. Right. And please keep on mine.
Yeah. And you're not didactic in the book. You know, I mean, there's a moment where you're like, there's several moments throughout the book, but even when you're talking about your religious experiences, and you're like, you know, religion couldn't do this for me. I'm not saying it can't do this for anybody else. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm saying for me in my life in this space, it didn't do these things. That's an important distinction to make, because sometimes when people write these books, you walk away feeling like you have to agree with the author, or you're being lectured to by the author about how to live and how to be, whether it's dating, parenting.
Yeah, I think that's why the saints like me. Yeah. Because I actually spoke at Penn yesterday, and one of the groups was Interfaith. And it's always the Interfaith groups, because I've started in the college campuses, they have the most questions. Yeah. Because I can tell that and some of them I can tell haven't come out yet. Yeah. But they're struggling, and I just want to, cause they want me to say, oh.
Wait a minute, you're saying there are people inside of the ministry who haven't come out?
Well, that's not what I meant.
Wait, you say there's closet people in the church?
Yes. Bless all their hearts.
I don't buy it.
But they wanted, a lot of them, particularly like the young folks. I guess it was like a 19-year-old guy. He wanted me to say, oh, I went back to church. I was like, well, it didn't work for me, but it might work for you. Because I'm very intentional at the beginning of the church. The beginning of the book, I wrote about going to 1 Corinthians. I'm like, I like that church. Right. If I found that church maybe 5-6 years sooner, You might see me in there every Sunday.
Right.
That didn't happen, so you ain't gonna see me in there that often, or ever again, maybe. But I wanted them to know, like, you can go to church like that. You can find it, or if you're gonna stick with it, hold these people up to the Christian virtues they purport to live by. But don't invite me because I ain't going.
Right.
But you can change things.
Absolutely. And one of the things, in addition to religion, that you talk about implicitly and somewhat explicitly is this idea of loving and affirming the self.
Right.
How you come to do that. Talk to me a little bit about some of this journey. By the way, the chapter titles, I love the chapter titles. I just want to read a couple of them to you because there's a lot of them. But
I'm a ridiculous person. Thank you.
The first taste, I see a priest in you. The first to worst, Diana Ross, you will die poor. Learning how to hoe and date and failing at both. This place is no sanctuary, itchy and scratchy, my lord and gyrator, the marrying kind, the pink print, I'll dial that number, the impossible, I can't date Jesus, of course, and sweet potato Saddam.
That's actually like having a regular conversation with me. If you
That sounds about right. Yeah. People normally that sounds about right. But but even the kind of irreverence in the titles themselves, but also the content is really important. Talk to me about hoeing and dating in both. Failing at both.
Yes. Okay, so a lot of the book is essentially about forging your identity through an expression of your sexuality, allowing yourself pleasure. So I begin the book saying how I had this
Can you say what you said before, allowing yourself pleasure?
Allowing.
It was a couple of things you said. I'm sorry.
A lot of the book is that's me being Speedy Gonzalez. I'm gonna go back to my broadcast class at Howard and slow down, chop and screw myself. A lot of the book is about essentially forging your identity through an expression of your sexuality and allowing yourself pleasure. It's one thing to know that you're gay; it's another to actually enjoy it. For me, I write about in the book. I learned about particularly being gay in the context of my uncle dying of AIDS when I was 6. I knew I was very early. I was a daycare thought. So when little boys were playing like doctor with girls, I was over here like, she's pretty but not hitting like him. And so that's what I was doing. But then around the same time my uncle dies of AIDS, my dad yells about him being a faggot. That's what I understood what it meant to be a faggot and to die. And having that paranoia of HIV AIDS haunted me. And then I thought what it meant to be gay was you go to hell. And you die of AIDS and you go to hell. And then you're probably mocked along the way. Because my only exposure, that was the country, was like in Living Color. Or like watching Pedro Zamora or watching Philadelphia. There wasn't much there to be seen. There's still really not a lot there. There's little speckles of hope now, but there's not much. So that's what I mean by that. For me, because I think a lot of times you don't really see queer men, particularly black gay men, have a space to talk about sex outside of dying or like the risk. The reality is HIV and AIDS is no longer an issue for most white gay men. It's very much an epidemic among poor black and Latino men. My dating pool is smaller just by default because I'm dating within those pools. So the reality is like I'm more at risk than other groups. But that ultimately, as I write about in the book, that doesn't necessarily control me anymore. I actually felt a few people who were positive. They didn't want me. So it's like you have a lifetime of fear, and then it's like, oh, sweetie, I don't see it for you. And so you just feel like, oh shit, that's what I get.
Hard pass.
Yeah. But I wanted to be able to write about sex, and that was actually another thing. Like, I don't want you to be too vulgar or too sexual, because if you think about it, you don't see gay men, particularly gay black men on TV and film, really be sexual. You don't really see gay men in general really have that space to kind of let it all out. The show How to Get Away with Murder, I think there was one scene there where they had something. That's only because the showrunner is gay, but that's a white gay man. I still don't see me. So I wanted to be able to write about the fact that sex can be awkward. A lot of us don't know what we're doing. Sex ed is a joke in this country. It doesn't exist. There's sex everywhere, but a lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. I wanted to write about essentially not knowing what I was doing. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to hoe. Or I think I'm ready to hoe. Don't think I'm really good at it. Oh shit, dates them. Because I'm basically a misandrous who is sexually attracted to men. Because men are terrible. And what is it like going on dates? But because I think a lot of times, even when I read a lot of these other memoirs I mentioned, it's straight people talking about that. But whereas like the gay counterpart that is just accessible, right. I didn't see that. So I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to write about how terrible it is and how using the apps, which is not my thing, because that's how I ended up with some fool who had, I think, either fleas or bed bugs and ended up with scars. So I write in the book like...
Talk a little about the dating app.
There's a lot of...
This is good stuff. Go ahead.
So there was... it's y'all grown. Okay, so one of my friends said... very in a sweet way, your dick is dry. He suggested I use Grinder and Jack to meet men and get my dick wet. That didn't go really well for me because one, I write about in the book how someone, and this is the thing is, I tend to think I'm very under the radar, but I've had to realize even a couple years ago, because you live in New York or you think, oh, it's a lot of you. No, it's really not.
It's like 7 of you.
Yeah. And 4 of them might not be out or write about it.
Right.
So someone screen grabbed a conversation that I had and put me on blast. And I was like, to my friends, like, why would that happen? It's like, cause fool.
Right.
You write everywhere.
Right.
What are you? So it was that embarrassing part, and then it was just the fact that, I don't know how to pick them. And fleas and termites, not termites. I once sat in a fire ant bed with a dude that I thought was black and Asian. I just think it was Houston, so he just had a grill and braids, which actually made sense.
He was just Asian.
Yes. And his name, I used the name Trevante in the book for legal reasons, but trust me, Trevante was very, very, very close to the name.
I was about to say.
So the fact that my sister was like, is that the one that did my niece's hair for prom? I was like,
right.
Girl, I'm not talking to you about this. But I wrote that just to that, and also I have larger aspirations for the book, so I also wanted to use my life and to write about it in that way. I wanted people to see, like, this should be seen in something else.
Right.
We're working on that, but yes.
The Diana Ross chapter.
Yeah. And I only named it Diana Ross because I'm so mad I'm not a rapper. And so that was like me naming like a mixtape track.
Right.
Diana Ross chapter, this is me coming out. I will say, I get why people are annoyed with having to tell their coming out stories, but I write it.
I gotta say, I was a little surprised in the chapter that you did.
That I did the coming out story?
Yeah, only because of how the book was. There's nothing wrong with the story. I think it's because the book's so irreverent and so not following a certain pattern.
Yeah, that was a negotiation.
All right.
I knew early on that when it eventually sold that people were going to want that, and because if I'm telling my life story, that is such a big part of how my type is consumed, so I knew I needed to include it. So I actually didn't want to write about Sweet Potato Saddam. I didn't want to include him. That's my name for the president. I have like a list in the book. I didn't want to talk about him either. But Matt was like, you talk about him all the time after the election, you cannot not talk about him. Yeah. But I didn't want him to invade that space, but the reality is negotiation, and
that's how the publishing industry works sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's that fourth wall. But it makes sense now. Now I feel, because I was reading, I was like, this doesn't seem like. No. It is a great story, and it's not that you shouldn't read it or anything like that. It's just, again,
I tried to make something that could have easily registered as hokey, not hokey.
Right.
So that was. I hope you didn't think it was hokey.
It wasn't hokey at all. I was just happy. You know what? I liked, and I won't ruin the book for you because I won't read it. But I was much happier when you were just talking about being under blankets at the daycare.
Yeah.
For me, like, that's the coming out story.
I agree.
Because that's the space where you talked about pleasure. You also talked about the fact that you weren't the only one.
Yeah.
Right?
I was not the only one.
It was like some people, they got dragged. They was crying like, please don't call my mom. Or you same thing.
Yeah.
For me, talking about pleasure and desire and all those things from an early age and how you were always very self-aware about that. And then somewhere along the line, the world exacted all kinds of pressures on you,
right, to
make you maybe rethink some of this stuff.
Yeah,
like, to me, that's the story.
I agree.
And that's not a critique. That's just me saying I was surprised.
I think she was my editor.
but Diana Ross.
Sorry, Rakesh, I love you. I'm kidding. I love you.
But your coming out story. Talk to me a little about why. I hate to do it now as an interviewer, but talk a little bit about it because I think it is important.
So I write it. When I was a daycare, I thought that was like 5, 6. I came out. I came to New York to intern, and so for me that was my time to, all right, nigga, you gay. You just be gay. So I was at a pride parade. I met some friends from high school who were up here, and it's funny because I actually ran into him at a bar recently, and a few months before the book came out, I said, I want to thank you for helping me, and he thought I was bullshitting. So he literally called me a few days later, wait, that stuff you said, you weren't just drunk? I was like, no, fool, I wasn't drunk, you were. You got me drunk after I said this. Because sometimes I needed a little hand holding.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to start to get out of my shell. I didn't know how. So he brought me to a club in New York called Luke and Leroy's. I go into the club, I'm like, them dudes dancing. He's like, "But we in a gay bar." And then a lot of alcohol later, I loosened up. And so from then he took me to a pride parade, and it's funny because at the pride, I literally was seeing so many different people from all parts of my life. It was people from high school, and usually people from like where I'm from, they don't leave. So I didn't think I would see them outside of like a few who managed to get away. People from a scholarship program that Magic Johnson said I would meet only in LA. People from Howard. It was so many people from all these different parts of my life that were starting to happen that they were all spotting me, and I literally ran at one point, and I just thought that was really stupid. So very much like an after school special, I turned around, walked back. I'm gay, girl. I know you've been talking. And then from there, I just started to tell other people. I didn't come out to my parents until much later. Because frankly, and then writing the book, I grew up in a very chaotic household. So I, to be blunt, just didn't think I owe them that. And I didn't want to be bothered with that because of my own issues with them. I told my sister. That was the bigger deal to me because my sister's 9 years older. I'm obsessed with my sister. She helped raise me to an extent. So her opinion mattered the most. My brother, who is also gay, called me and asked me about it. I cursed him out. Then I called back and apologized. I'm a mean big brother sometimes. He deserves it. And then from there, I started telling my friends, and I kind of write about that in the book. I just want to reiterate, having to tell that story, and this is not to you, but in general to your point, it can be kind of exhausting, but I think because there's still not enough people who share that.
That's why I only wanted you to tell it here, because I'm like, and the people who will be watching this later, because it's still a thing people are wrestling with.
And also, when you tell people, duh is not a nice response. You can just let them have their moment, even
right.
if you
let it be dramatic. Let it be
Mm-hmm.
dramatic, right?
Because when I was like, literally in the iLab at Howard, was like, I knew that. You could have took me to the clubs. I was like, I'm like, yo, Keish, you really could have let me have. You could have been like, or like, not even do that. I was like, oh, really? That's nice. I mean, the only woman you ever talked about was Beyonce to me, but it's nice that you confirmed it. But don't say duh. It's offensive. Like, let me have a little bit.
You give a minute. Your father. So, what's interesting to me about your parents? Not when you came out to your father when your father asked if you were funny. What I thought was more interesting, even around your uncle, was not the kind of explicit shame of your father calling him the F word, because that's like old school just homophobia, right?
Yeah.
That's like old black man homophobia that you probably weren't prepared for. For me, what was more interesting was your mom's response.
Yeah.
Because your mom, you trusted your mom.
I did, and I wanted her to fight her religion a bit more the same way I would fight him off of her or just fight for her. Like, it's a touchy, still a touchy situation, but I've come to realize a lot of the dads tend to take it better than the moms. Because the one thing I found out in writing the book, I had already forgiven my father, but my sister, because no one talks in my house ever, while I'm writing the book, she literally says, oh, I didn't remember that. And then she calls me maybe a week or two later. Oh, yeah, I remember what you're talking about now, but you know Daniel used to live in the house, right? My Uncle Daniel. I was like, no, I wouldn't have known that. I wasn't alive.
Right.
So my Uncle Daniel and my dad were really tight to the point where he used to live at the house. My Uncle Daniel was a heroin addict. He was gay. My dad had less of an issue about him being gay than I actually thought. It wasn't like he was maybe like just completely like, about to be at the pride parade with a black and out, but he didn't shut him out. He spoke out of anger when he died, which is what my dad tends to do, because neither of my parents are really trained well on how to deal with their emotions, because they both come from abuse, be it physical, emotional, verbal. So he doesn't know how to handle his emotions in the best way. And knowing that, when she said it, I was like, oh, that makes sense, because he literally says the most awful things to my mom, and sometimes us, when he will get drunk and angry or be triggered. And then I mentioned how one of my cousins on Facebook, because the Arceneaux, it's a lot of them. I know none of that family. It's like they cut that branch off the family tree and turn it into sage or whatever. They don't fool with us. So one of my first hit up my dad and was like, oh, your sons are on the internet bragging about being gay. My dad knew better than to talk to me about that.
Right.
He calls my sister. I know my boys are gay. It ain't my fault. I don't care. I just want them to be happy. And I was like, that old thug said that? She said, yes. And so, for me at least, I had already, a lot of things in the book is like creating closure when you're not going to get it.
Right.
My mom is just not going to see where I am.
Right.
My dad doesn't even have the language to express himself or to even say I'm sorry. So I have to meet them where they're at. I have to forgive them in my own way, and I have to just accept what this is, or don't accept it. But I need to kind of make a choice. I think, so I was already prepared, and I actually wrote the chapter, but when my sister said that, I had to go back in and obviously make some tweaks, because first I sat with it, and then I went in and tweaked with it, and I was like, I wish you had told me this when I wrote the book. When the book is due soon, sis. So, but yeah, my dad is very interesting. I don't even think he's not mentioned the book.
We're gonna talk about that. I got a question about that. One of my favorite books is Remembered Rapture by Bell Hooks. The Artist at Work is the subtitle. And one of the things she talks about in the book is she reflects on what it means to be a writer, but also what it means to do memoir, because Bell Hooks does a lot of memoir. And one of the things she talks about, one is the need for memoir, the urgency of black people, and particularly black women doing memoirs, because our lives are always subject to violence and we could die at any time. But also she talks about the complications of writing memoirs when you're young.
Yeah.
Because your family gonna read it.
Mm-hmm.
There's the issue of shame, stigma. Don't talk about this stuff outside the house.
Yes.
And also, boy, this ain't what happened.
You know, it's so interesting about that. I have not got any of that.
Really?
My parents have not read. Well, it's funny, when I did an interview, it's like, yeah, Dad's like, that nigga don't read. It wasn't shade, but like, he don't. Like, Pops ain't reading this. My mom communicated through my aunt that she's not going to read it. And of the few conversations me and my mom have had about the book, she's just not gonna read it, and I don't want to even bother anymore. But my aunts who read it...
What's the reason she gave, if you don't mind me asking?
She didn't tell me directly. She told my aunt. The thing about my mom is that I think she comes from the place of you don't tell your business.
Right.
Information is a weapon. And I actually think, to be blunt, she thinks white people are using me to make something that's not acceptable, unacceptable, acceptable, and then eventually I'll be dropped off and then she'll be there to pick me up.
Right.
Which is the most backhanded old Southern black woman shit I can think of. But it's
so common, right?
Yeah. So there's that.
Right.
And I also think, maybe she doesn't want to really hear me talk about sex, which is fair, but I don't think that's it. I think it's more so not wanting to indulge in something that she thinks should not be happening. My sister has not objected to anything. She's actually just laughed. My brother, I know he's blood. I know he's happy. But there's so if you notice, there's only one line about my brother in the book.
Yeah.
I asked for permission to say that, and I left it alone. There's some issues there that I kind of usually don't. So I don't know if he's read it. There are other concerns to think about right now. But of the family members who have read it, who at least talked to me, because a lot of them know better than say anything to me. The extended family wouldn't know anyway.
Right.
Because a lot of what happened in our immediate family was just there. We kind of it was just us.
Yeah.
The only one that I think I might have said it didn't happen like this was my sister, and she actually hasn't objected to anything I've written. My aunts have felt, my mom's sister, they say they both felt really bad that they didn't know to the extent of what was going on
in the house.
Yeah, so they felt bad for my mom, they felt bad for me, and they wish they had done more, but they all were kind of taught to not even tip too much into someone else's business. And all of this silence, and like, this is why we're all nuts, because y'all don't talk to each other and y'all don't say nothing. I'm like, I got my grandparents, that's the old Catholic in me, but they gone, and that's why y'all crazy. Like, break the cycle somewhat. And I feel like I'm like usually just talking to myself around them. But no one said anything. My mom said she's not gonna read it. She's not gonna read it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wondered if it was about issues of abuse and reliving trauma.
I will say, one of my aunts said made me worry that she might be embarrassed about some of what I've said and how that will make her feel. And I actually was cognizant of that, and I felt guilt over that. When you write about your life, you're also telling other people's stories, but you should only do that to a certain extent. So I will say, while I was very detailed, there's a lot that I actually did not put in, particularly about that, out of respect to her, and it's just also to the practice, like, it's not my place to tell everyone's story. So that's why you don't really read much about my brother. My dad, there's a lot worse things that happened, but I didn't feel it was necessary to add that. I think you get the point from what I gave.
Right.
But I did worry about talking about my mom and maybe exposing in that way. But I still needed to get that out, and I tried to walk as tight a line as I could. It would have been nice if she maybe read and let me know how she felt, but again, I write about meeting people where they're at. I've been tested about that after the book when I went home for Houston for a book event, and I have to stick to my word, and you know, she's not gonna change her mind. But when my auntie said I was honest but respectful, that's the best cosign I could get from anyone in the family. She's like, so I just was like, I did the best I could, and I had to let that part go. But yeah, I did wrestle a lot with that because I'm still wrestling with it now. I think about when it comes up.
The other thing people don't appreciate sometimes about memoir or autobiographical writing is the emotional labor of writing it. What was it like for you to relive those things and to write through it?
So I'm not a crier, and I don't say that as a badge of honor. It's more like I need my own Fraser Crane already. But I definitely cried writing about my dad, and to an extent writing about my mom, because those were the most challenging parts of the book to write, particularly having to relive it. So don't want to spoil, but I write about how I'm basically a recurring nightmare well into my 30s of my dad murdering my mom, and I couldn't stop it. So having to actually break down what that nightmare has been like on paper, and knowing to be a writer, having to be detailed and to get it right, it's easier said than done. So actually writing it, then having to rewrite it and do it again, and then having to sit and think, and then having to kind of mention how, and then for me, I thought about, even while writing it, that when I go home, I can still see mom and dad scratched into the wall that I did when I was, so that was very triggering. And then writing about my mom, and kind of, again, I have made peace with where we're at, but there's still obviously a sadness there that we can't be as close as I would like to be because of that. So that was triggering. So that part that actually made me cry. Not my favorite things to talk about, but it was cathartic to get it out. And I actually, particularly with my dad, it ended on a nice, as good of a note as it could. Yeah. And after that, he actually called me out of the blue. Hey, that boy, you all right? I love you, Pop. So even with that, I had to train him how to just say, not like he's a dog, but just to say, I love you, Pop. Just to get him to say it back. Yeah. And now he says it without saying it. But that's a lot.
That's a hell of a lot of progress.
Yeah, that's just, and always like I say as good as it's gonna get, but actually that's pretty great considering, because he did not come from that school. And also when he used to say it, he would only say it after he did the worst and terrorized us all night. So that was just manipulative. Right. Now I know it's coming from a different place. But those were hard to write about. Wow. Probably definitely the hardest thing to write about.
Wow. Well, let's pivot to something that's not really more positive, just less personal. Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. I actually wasn't sure you was going to be here because all the shit was happening. I was like,
I'm not in the CNN building. I was going to be right here, man. I was glad I went in that building, though. It's a crazy time.
Yeah. I walk by the building all the time. I have friends in that building. I have another friend at the Clinton working in the middle of the Clinton Foundation. He's so consuming. I can't say that. I'm just recording. I'm tired of that, man. I'll just say that. Yes. When is the nightmare over? I actually was tweeting about this that's actually why they made me talk about him, because I tweet about him too much. It's hard not to. You can't help it. I can't get away from the motherfucker. So sorry, was there a specific question about that man?
No. I'm really thinking. He's admitted Donald Trump. People just go off. I'm really thinking specifically about kind of the moment we're in and how it kind of shapes, and not just Donald Trump really, but really the political moment we're in and how it shapes, expands, or forecloses on possibilities for being a healthy young.
I would say on the business end, it was cynical how it was told to me, your book will probably sell now because of that. That's not a good feeling, particularly when LGBTQ violence is surging under this administration. Right. I will say it shows that Darnell Moore, my book, another queer writer, Casey Girard, I hope I'm not messing up his name, his book just came out. It's really important that you have our stories there. And Samantha Irby, another queer writer, because a lot of people are like afraid and terrified. And I think about particularly my friends in the South, and especially in Houston, because actually I think Houston is a lot more progressive than people get credit for. I don't claim the rest of the state.
Right.
I mean, Harris County is its own nightmare with it's a lot of there, but overall, one thing that I always felt in Houston is it was more queer friendly than I actually knew. I just didn't have the language back then. But there's an obvious shift now. I know that things are different. I know people worry more. Even my oldest niece is 20, my youngest is 10. They went to the same schools. Those little white kids are giving her hell now. Although she's learning now already that boys are not good to young girls, but particularly like the racism, she's getting it so much more. So yeah, it's not a great time. So I do think it's really important that people like me are running my mouth about our lives, because we need more visibility now more than ever. We need to be humanized. We need people to see us as people. Okay, I was about to go rant about that man again. I just want him to go to the cross. I can't say that. Oops. Well, not glory, damnation, whatever.
You wanted to end. You wanted
I wanted to end. Yes.
What's a more unreasonable statement? Trump is a strong president, or Beyonce's overrated?
What is the what now? Is he? What's a more?
He's a good president, or Beyonce's overrated? What's a more absurd statement?
Because I don't want to be a atheist, I would say I'm quantifying like, is he good at what? I would say he's better at it. It's chaos, but he's better at doing this than people maybe give credit for.
So you don't think he's just a puppet, an idiot who's just stumbling into things? You think he has an actual plan?
I think it's a combination of both. He's someone who's failed up all his life. I think what he continues to get away with is that he is just audacious and bold as fuck because he doesn't know any better and he just genuinely doesn't care. He has nerve, and most politicians don't have that type of nerve. Most media personalities don't have nerve. Yeah. If a lot of you are conditioned to just kind of follow norms and rules. He don't give a fuck, and no one thinks to do anything to counter that. Yeah. So I think that's why he's able to continuously bulldoze people and bombard us with like mess. I think he's very good at that. If they were better, I don't know if we'd all be free right now. But
right.
He's not. Beyonce's over. Well, no,
I knew that wasn't gonna happen.
No, that's never.
You gotta say he counts time in Beyonce albums.
Yeah.
In the book, he's like, I haven't been to church in 5 Beyonce albums. It's like, yeah.
I will say I didn't like the first half of I Am Sasha Fierce. It wasn't bad. It's just not my favorite. This is close to gonna get to the same time. It was.
You might be out the high for that.
It was adult contemporary Beyonce, which was gorgeous, but not my favorite. I'm still trying to get this book to Beyonce, so we're not and I'm actually getting close, so I don't want to.
Oh, then yes, we'll edit that part out too.
Mama Tina knows the book exists. Her publicist knows it exists. It's just about getting it into her hands.
Maybe you should give it to DeRay McKesson.
He know. If Yvette already know, like someone handed to her. So
he's friends, and I know he'd be at the events.
We working around.
There you go.
I want people who could already put it in her hand to put it in her hand.
That's true.
And not just whisper sweet nothings.
There we go.
No shade.
None at all. What?
I love that I do this recording, but it's fine. They know what it is.
No, there's no shade here. Before we go to questions, we want to take questions. A great time for you to sign it for everybody. What do you wish 13-year-old or 15-year-old Michael Arceneaux knew?
I'm still trying to learn this lesson. I'm not really good at chilling out. 13-year-old, 15-year-old me was just very angry, very restless, ambitious, and wanting to get out. I think, well, actually, no. If I could tell 13, 15-year-old Michael anything, it's like, don't take them loans. That's honestly.
It's very practical.
Everything else, don't take them. I need to finish the proposal, so I know my agent's going to cuss me out, but I have a second book already. It's called I Don't Want to Die Poor. Right. I don't want to die poor, so... Which
connects to a chapter in the book. I mean, yes. That's another part of it, right? Because I made this book sound way heavier than it probably is. That's just the stuff that resonated, but there's a lot of life stuff in here. I thought of the Broke Diaries, actually, when I was reading parts of it.
I love that book so much. I want to write something to that effect, but I wrote something in February about my issues with private loan debt for the New York Times and the Sunday Review. I would love to expand on that and, like, what is it like to be in your 30s and you did everything right to attain social mobility, but the system you were told to believe in doesn't exist. And the guilt I have of like being one of the few that really got out of my hood at Harlem Clark in Houston, and I chose to be a writer of all things and not a corporate lawyer. That type of stuff. So if I could go back, honestly, because everything that happened needed to happen, I think I just would have said, don't take the loan. To play more into the question, because I do get it. To really lean into the fact that it will be okay. I'm only really finally now thinking it'll be okay. And that was honestly because I had, making the list is not winning the lotto ticket. But I will say, I say this humbly, there were people who I respect or just know got a lot more money than me, got a lot more support. This was a lot of me. This was a lot of people who love my work and wanted to see me do well, really helped me. And I will say that's opened up a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely.
I really genuinely, truly wanted to make it easier for people like me to write books and to get in these spaces. Because I remember not long ago that even when you do a nonfiction proposal, it's essentially your creative vision, but it's a business proposal. You have to list other books that are comparative works. I loved Ta-Nehisi's first book. That was in there. I loved Helena's book. That was in there. I ended up working with her, but a black lit agent, and there ain't that many of them, was like, take that out. Those books didn't sell. And because it was just a dry period for like authors, very few of us would get in those spaces. So for me even to make that list, it lets me know that it's gonna continue to open the doors. I will get the money I deserve the next round. Stuff is starting to happen for me. But I also know that now other black queer people, other like southern like black writers can put my book in their proposal and say my book can be I can be marketable. That really does matter. Like I really wanted to make it easy because I heard such nonsense from people. They wanted me to take out all my country ass references, all my 90s references. They wanted me to be sadder. And being told that I was niche so many times, I've been fortunate enough to where I've been able to talk to Terry Gross and be on the Breakfast Club. It's not niche, that's like range. I think a lot of us have a lot more range than even some of us unfortunately don't give us credit for. So the fact that I've been able to, I wish I could have told my old self to calm down. I still need to tell myself to calm down, but I'm learning to finally calm down. A vape pen is helping with that, but it's also relates to weed and into sex. But yes, we learn, and better late than never.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with it. Let's go to some questions. Yeah, right.
Shout out to your Fraser Crane reference. I watch that every night, and I'm also a therapist. So my question, I'm gonna give you my question, and I'm gonna go back to one or two things that you said. When Mark was talking about, or you were talking about siding under the blankets in daycare, and then you made a reference to like your identity as well as sexual exploration and understanding pleasure. In daycare, I would not connect that to a sexual orientation because many people explore bodies during the daycare period. But I also was thinking about an Insecure reference where I think Molly had dated a man and he told her that he had a sexual experience earlier on, and one of the characters went straight gay. As a therapist, when I work with both gay male or queer males that are trying to come out or maybe already out but don't want to date somebody in the beginning stages of the process, or when I'm working with women who don't have a preference not to date bisexual, queer, or gay men, I'm always thinking about that juxtaposition about like, so where do we, how do we respectfully inquire with somebody that we might be dating around their identity, their sexual exploration, and that straight gay thing? I'm not sure if that's a clear question, but like how do you explore that with somebody and be respectful to their humanity, their story, their identity? Well,
to your point, that is body exploration, but what I meant was, like I mentioned, like Janet Jackson, I speak in Janet Jackson too. She said that she was very sexual even as a child, and she just had these feelings. For me, at the time, like I knew at 5 or 6, there was exploration because I also did it with a girl too. Around that time, I just knew I liked boys more. I didn't have a name for it. If you hadn't have told me anything was wrong with my feelings or just having crushes on boys, I would have just had crushes on boys throughout elementary school. I would have went to middle school. I would have done everything the same way, just not straight. No one would have thought anything of it. That was about me kind of not having the space to kind of really lean it, because I thought I had to just embrace these stigmas really early because they were just thrown onto me. I think people should be allowed space to explore their sexuality. I personally would not assign anything to anyone based on that. I think the terms gay, bisexual, I know some people like to say they don't believe in labels. I think the labels aren't the problem, it's just the connotation people attach to them. Gay is just only a predominant attraction to someone of the same gender. I could have sex with Rihanna. I'm actually curious to have sex with Rihanna. Sure, but I've seen Amber Rose. I don't know usually much about him, but Amber Rose's vagina seemed lovely when I saw it on the internet, unintentionally. So, Ali twerked on me when I lived in LA, so I get it. But I know I'm gay. But I know if I'm still a woman that she'd be like, I don't know, boy. But I already know I'm gay. I don't know if you following.
I am following him very much.
But I remember that Insecure episode. I love that show. I understand that's a lot of people's opinions. I will say, I personally, if I were involved in the process, I would have tried to put in some other point of view and been a little bit more stringent about getting that in there, because I do think men in particular need to. Because this actually came up at a book club and then they started arguing, and I was like, can I go? I'm tapped out. If someone told me that there are a lot of gay men that I have dated who had sex with women, I don't think that they're straight.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that men might have an experience and don't get that same courtesy. I unfortunately am not in control of that, but I wish more people could be allowed to say that without doing that. And that's hopefully something maybe I can change when I have an opportunity, Beyonce willing, to make that happen. But yeah, that is unfortunate, because I think I've met plenty of dudes that smash women and I don't think anything of it. They're bewildered that I haven't had sex with a woman before, but yeah, I don't think I answered that question. I just
You did answer. It's a big question, and what I was really asking is, how do you explore it respectfully if you're on the dating side of it? Like, if I was going to date you and I said, well, my preference is to be with a straight man, but I want to hear about whatever identity or history, or maybe I could change my mind. And I'm just using myself and you as an example. But how do you do that? Or also, like I said, when I have gay male or queer males and they're at a place in their outness where they're like, I don't want to date somebody who's still trying to figure out whatever it is they're figuring out. So that's what I mean by like, how do you respectfully ask that question or talk about it where it won't feel an insult to you, right? Like, or whatever.
I wish we were all further along than we are. So there's not really much I just wish better, but the reality is like we're not there yet. I think it just ultimately requires more people to talk, and then eventually it might be better. But I will say also I would question, we all have preferences, but I want people to be very secure about what informs those preferences and what's behind that. So for people to challenge that and to be informed about that. But I will say personally, at my age, I wouldn't want to date someone that was still questioning themselves. I understand where they are. I get it. I've been there. I'm done with that part of my life. But if I were not 5, I'd be too old for that still. 10 years ago, we might have been figuring out something together. But I just think about where everybody is. But like, yeah, it's hard because I'm trying not to police people's preferences, but I do want people to kind of interrogate what informs that preference. And that's the best I can do, and just hope for us.
No, I think that's great to say what informs your preferences, because then you get to know about the person and their journey, and you may like them even more. Yeah. You may cross a preference that you would not have previously.
But me, I gotta know what you like already. And even if you're Bob, but just have it settled. I'm 34 and I need a man. Tony Braxton. Find me a man, Tony Braxton. Man.
You said so much. I mean,
I do talk a lot, man.
No, that's a good thing. That's a good
First
thing.
half of I am, you didn't like.
Yeah, I just like, okay. Because I feel like she can hear us.
Oh, she can.
What takes the #1 spot? Which album?
My favorite album is B-Day. I Write About Why. It's just she made me comfortable with parts of myself that would register as feminine. Because the faggot word came up again. I remember one time dancing with my homegirl, Janine. And she's like, oh, you dance like a faggot. And she meant it as a compliment. I was like, you almost got us killed on the freeway, because I immediately stopped dancing. You almost had this drive-through daiquiri. I will spit on YouTube. Don't do that. I was in Houston. So I wrote about that. Like it made me, so that's my favorite album, just because it's what was then called Sissy Bounce. It was just so much Houston, Louisiana. It was so much black country ass shit that most people didn't even know what they were like bopping along to.
Yeah.
So for me, that's my favorite. I think her best album is a Beyonce album. I do understand why people love Lemonade the most though, but you know, I can only cry with you for so long, or like cuss you out the first half, cry with you at the end. It's not what I really signed up for. It's a beautiful record, but Beyonce's a nice mix. I hope, please don't hate me. I just feel like she can hear me. I'm trying to get this on her Instagram and her couch.
It's gonna be. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it happen. Right now, what we're gonna do is head over next door for a book signing. Michael's gonna sign books for us and take pictures and talk. And Beyonce will be on. Which album you want on? Or would you like a mix?
Oh no, y'all can play anything.
Okay, no,
play City Girls. I'm kidding. Don't play City Girls. I need a background.
I really want to thank you for this book. I think sometimes when you're in a historical moment, it's hard to appreciate what's happening. Mm-hmm. But I think you are part of a generation of not just black gay male writers, which I think is amazing and powerful. And you have opened the door for another generation of writers to not have to struggle so hard to be able to have their voices out there. But you're also part of a generation of Southern writers.
Thank
you. Kiese. I mean, there's a whole bunch of.
I am obsessed with Kiese, so
he's I can't. I won't publish his book right now, but it's just his writing is makes me want to not write. But but you're also you're talking about what it means to be young and black and male and queer, but also Southern. At this moment.
Yeah, I was very everybody going home. I'm not, but not yet. But I just, for me. And again, it is a Beyonce reference, but another reason why I write about her so much is that so often you are told to dilute who you are in order to attain mass appeal. One thing I really love about her, outside of her Sarah McLachlan stage on that part of the album, is that she really did bring...
You don't want her to have this book!
I like Sarah McLachlan, but she brought people to her, not the other way around. So one thing about freelancing, aside of the headaches, and you turn into Ted Cruz every tax season, is that you know that for me, I knew my voice could be in any spot. I've written for white sites, black sites, women's sites, men's sites, queer sites. I've been the same in everything. So when I finally had an opportunity to be my complete self, you were gonna get these UGK references. You were gonna see me talk about Alligator and Boudin. You're gonna see me very much talk about, because Houston, one thing I've been really happy about is that so many people from Houston are like, ooh, you really are from Houston. That's made me really happy, because I didn't, and he said, I didn't, I love New York. I write about being in New York, but I'm not from there. I'm not a hood hopper. I wanted to talk about what it was like for me. I wanted to write the equivalent of like watching the No Angel video and seeing people on horses in J's riding through the hood, like, 'cause that happens. So I wanted to put all those things in there, and I didn't doubt for a second that just because it was my version, because I didn't invent anything, it's a coming of age story, but it's definitely from my perspective, which I've often felt is missing. Because the thing is, like, I don't need to be y'all. Y'all already got that.
Right.
I wanted to be very much myself, and because so often people kind of like look down on the South and feel like it's embarrassed, like a guilty. No, y'all take everything from us. And no, I'm gonna put this in this book. And my friend called it Gulf Coast Birdlit, which it's fine.
It's a genre.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you for this book.
No, thank you for having me.
Please give Michael a round of applause.
Thank y'all for coming.